Boston Scott. Is this guy even real?
Once a giant, always a giant. For me, it's only a giant.
What's going on YouTube? Diggy546. Definitely hit that subscribe button if you're new. Like the video if you like the video. And I won't tell if you click that bell. But let's go ahead and get into this. Alright, so I haven't made a video since my Eagles post-game reaction. And this is going to be me pretty much reviewing the season. Kind of like crossing the T's, dotting the I's. I almost thought I got that wrong. But this is going to be me just reviewing the season I have. Let's see. I got what, like maybe 12, 13, 14 points. I got a bunch of points I'm going to touch on. This may go over 10 minutes, may go over 15 minutes. But I think that all these points are essential in a season review. And I don't do a podcast. So it's not like it's going to be over, an hour kind of video. So I'll touch some of these. Some of these will be quick. Some of these will be longer. And I'll just start it off. The first one is you can't ignore this. Daniel Jones' emergence this year was apparent. Now, 15 touchdowns passing, 7 rushing. So that gives you 22 touchdowns total to about, I think 8 turnovers he had, 7 turnovers, something like that. Really good season for him. I think he had a 3-to-1 touchdown ratio. That's about as good as you could ask for. Better than 3-to-1, I'm pretty sure. But Daniel Jones definitely showed up this year. He didn't have the gaudy stats. He didn't throw for 4,000. He didn't throw for 30 touchdowns. But he led this team running the football, passing the football. He led this team to win after win after win. And this team would not have been here with over half of the league's quarterbacks, which shows you he has stepped up. He stepped up. I think he's gone from a guy who was a top 23 quarterback to a guy that's a top 13 quarterback. That's where I think he's landed. And Daniel Jones has definitely stepped up. I can make entire videos about Daniel Jones, which I'm sure I will. We got a long season ahead of us. It is what it is. We got a long season, so I'm sure I will get to that. But Daniel Jones has definitely stepped up. Next up, Saquon is still that guy. Now, I've seen some things on Twitter, especially today too, where they're like posting that video of Saquon when we were down 28-0 or 21-0 or something like that. And Saquon had to split literally 4 defensive backs if he was going to score this touchdown, and he didn't do it, obviously. And people are saying he lost his burst. I do think, now, I don't think Saquon has lost any straight line speed, but I do think that Saquon has lost just a little bit of his escapability. I do think he has. I just don't see that same side-to-side ability. But you guys saw the Vikings game. You saw the double spins. He still is amazing in that category. He had a back juke this past week where he just looked amazing. So I still think Saquon is that guy. Now, will he ever be the best running back in the league like he was a couple of years ago? I don't know. I don't know if this offense is even going to allow him to do that, which is the beauty of how we're using Saquon. We decided to run this guy into the ground the first half of the season. Texans game, he got 35 carries. Even though we were able to move up and down the field passing the ball, we were determined to get this guy as many carries as we could beginning of the season. But as you see, week 16, week 15, week 14, all the way, about probably like week 14 through the playoffs, we figured out how to get Saquon involved in the passing game. And it wasn't he had to go out and split out wide and run, some complicated route, run a double move, which he can do. But what we did is we decided to just use him in the swing pass like Eli did in 2018. Throw this guy a swing pass. It's basically like a screen because he's going to make one guy miss. He's going to run through a guy. He's going to make something happen to turn that play that probably would be a sack or a throwaway. He's going to turn that play into a 6-yard gain, into a 4-yard gain, into a 5-yard gain. So we have finally realized that we should be dumping the ball off to this guy when all else fails. And he showed up there. Of course, he showed up at the beginning of the season running that football and really carrying us to a couple of wins. Saquon Barkley is still that guy. Is he a guy that we're going to bring back? I'm not sure. If the guy's asking for 16, you probably aren't able to bring him back. But if he's asking for, they said he turned down 12, which I'll make a video about Saquon, but you obviously want this guy back as a Giant. He still showed that he is that star player. He impacted the game heavily all throughout the season. Next up, Thibodeaux may be a star. And I got pros in here. I got cons. I mixed it up a little bit. But this is my last pro for now. I'll get back to some pros after this. But Tibbs may be a star. And when I say may be a star, I'm about 75% sure that Kayvon Thibodeaux will be a player. He will be a guy. First off, he has the intangibles. He's got the leadership. You see that already as a rookie. He's got the just that aura that star players have that just makes people want to follow him, that makes people want to, come out and play harder. Thibodeaux is a guy that I think will be a star. I mean, he wins most of his pass rush moves. He's getting held all over the place. Hopefully they start to call that, or hopefully he finds a way to counteract the way he's getting put in chokeholds like this all year round. But I think Kayvon Thibodeaux will be just fine. In Wink's system, you guys don't get a ton of sacks, but I do think that Kayvon Thibodeaux will be a guy that is ferocious, a guy that will be very, very difficult to block for years to come. The athleticism showed up, the hustle showed up, all of the hoopla and everything about Kayvon Thibodeaux not being a high effort player, that got dispelled. You see this guy chasing down the backside running back. You see this guy like literally reversing field, running guys down 30 yards down the field. Thibodeaux is a guy that is going to give 100% every single time he's out there. Now, after Thibodeaux, we drafted Evan Neal. And Evan Neal had a very important, he had not an important story, well, I guess it's important, but a very interesting story this season. A ton of people are done with Evan Neal, at least at right tackle. But I'm in the camp of Evan Neal hasn't really, he's a rookie. He's a tackle, he's a rookie. Rookie tackles they're vulnerable. They're very vulnerable. The Eagles have the best defensive line in the league. We played them twice this year. The Cowboys have Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. We played them twice. You guys get where I'm going. We played a ton of defensive lines that are ferocious. Now, also, Evan Neal just has looked bad. One thing I'll say to that is that I've seen Evan Neal start to play better before he got hurt. And when he got hurt, he missed those games and he came back and he has not looked the same. He just hasn't looked the same. We already know he's playing through that MCL, which, wasn't torn, but definitely severely sprained. We already know he's playing through that. And then every once in a while, you see the guy grabbing his arm, like grabbing his arm. He's in pain. Every once in a while, you just see that stuff going on. So I don't think Evan Neal is right. I don't think he probably should have been out there. You probably want him out there for experience sake, but I think he was playing heavily hampered, and hopefully he comes out next year and balls out. But one thing you cannot ignore this season is that as a rookie, not me saying that this lasts anywhere beyond this season, as a rookie, Evan Neal has been a disappointment as a rookie. Moving on, I just wanted to give a shout out to the gritty depth guys. Now, Richie James is a borderline depth guy. He's pretty much a starter, but shout out to Richie James. Richie James got so much hate because he lost us that game. I mean, I got to be real. We were all upset with the dude. We all wanted him cut. But Richie James, this team does not make the playoffs if we cut Richie James after that Seattle game. We don't make the playoffs. He's a guy that constantly was open. He had an 80-something%, I think like 88% catch rate. So he has had drops. He's had crucial drops, but he's also caught the ball at a higher rate than pretty much every other slot receiver in the game, in the league. And this isn't me saying that he even needs to come back, but it just shows how well Richie James has stepped up as a guy who was looked at as our fourth receiver at best coming into this season. Fifth receiver, fourth receiver, not even a guy who was solidified that he was going to make the roster. So shout out to Richie James. Shout out to Ben Bredesen, and shout out to Nick Gates, comeback player of the year. He won't win it, but Nick Gates came back from the most difficult situation that you can come back from. Literally, his leg was like broken in a billion different places. The dude fought and came back not a year after the year after he went out. Literally the next season, he came back and he was ready fairly early in the season. So shout out to Nick Gates for rehabbing. Shout out to Ben Bredesen. And those two guys rotating, they eventually kind of settled in at left guard. They still kept rotating, but that side of the line started to kind of solidify. So I wanted to give props to them. I wanted to give props also to Nick McLeod. Nick McLeod got thrown in as an undrafted free agent. Pretty much, I'm pretty sure the guy's a rookie or a second-year player. Pretty sure he's a rookie, though. But he got thrown in the fire and had to step up. And I'm telling you, this guy, when Adoree Jackson was missing games, he played like a league average corner. And this guy, of course, you're hoping. No, this is no downside to him. You're hoping that this guy's your fourth or fifth corner next year. And we got very solid play out of this guy. You can say it's the system, you can say anything, but undrafted free agent corner, he stepped up and he deserves praise. He deserves credit. Shout out to Nick McLeod. Shout out to Cordell Flott, who also stepped up in some spots, did some good things. Hopefully he gets some more opportunities in the future. I already did my film session on him. You guys know how I feel about Flott. Next up, a huge shout out to Pennock. Jason Pennock. I mean, this dude is a missile. Pennock is an absolute missile. Like, this guy flies all over the field. Sometimes he's in the wrong spot, but he's doing it with urgency. So you got to love that. Shout out to Pennock. And those are some of the gritty depth guys that I saw this year. I wanted to give a shout out to. I probably missed some. You guys drop some in the comments for guys that you wanted to shout out to that were like gritty guys, who were depth guys. And just a spoiler alert, I mentioned Hodgins on this list. I didn't consider him a depth guy because he stepped up so much for us that he pretty much became our number one receiver. But moving on, another point, Azeez was hurt pretty much all year. When Azeez was out there, he looked like our best pass rusher, bar none. Bar none. He looked like our best pass rusher. He was not blocked one-on-one unless he was hurt or playing through an injury. And Azeez was legit hurt all year. He got his sophomore year pretty much stolen from him with the injuries. Put on a ton of weight. Good weight, ton of muscle. People talked about how great he looked in camp, how much more explosive he was, how much more strong he is, and it all showed up. But he has not been able to stay healthy. Hopefully this isn't a LaRon Landry kind of thing where the guy is always hurt because he put on so much muscle, and you just never get to see him out there. But very unfortunate that Azeez was hurt. You got to think if Azeez was here, he might make some plays that win us like 2-3 more games. But he just pretty much was kind of here, not here, not here. He never really got to settle in. And even still, in spots, he looked really, really great. Next up, we might have a number 2 wide receiver in Hodgins. And I say that not really realistically, because I still don't think he can be a number 2 unless Wan'Dale Robinson falls off a cliff, which I think he'll continue to get better. But he may be able to be a third option for us. He may be able to be a solid third option that is here in 4 years for us. I'm thinking we'll draft or sign or trade for a wide receiver, a number 1 guy. That'll be the guy. Wan'Dale will be your 2. And not saying that Wan'Dale's lining up outside or inside. I'm just telling you, he'll be your 2. And Isaiah Hodgins will be your third receiver. So I think that he could possibly be that guy. I mean, I think he had 6 touchdowns. He had a touchdown in the Vikings game, I think, again, in the playoff game. He had over 100 yards that game. Another game against the Vikings, he had 70. So he's showing some promise. I think he's more than just a Band-Aid for a couple of weeks. I think he's a guy that can at least be your third option at receiver. Next up, we need wide receivers. We need wide receivers. That's my next point. Hodgins is great. Richie James, solid guy. Darius Slayton, solid. But when you throw those guys out there, they're not moving the needle at all. I think they're all maybe solid 3s and 4s. But we need Wan'Dale back. Shep is a good. I think this wide receiver core will be solid with Shep, but he's not going to be healthy. We just can't say that this guy's going to be healthy, and it stinks because I really like Sterling Shepard. He's one of my favorite players. Want him to retire as a Giant, but we cannot depend on that guy staying healthy. So We got to get a number one. We got to get a number one, and we got to get a deep threat. Slayton is a deep threat, but we have to have more than just Slayton. And we just got to have a guy that really puts fear at the wide receiver position into the hearts of the defense. That strikes fear in them. And that leads me to my next point. Thank you, Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton has been a guy that's been criticized by me, by a bunch of Giants fans, everybody. I mean, Darius Slayton was a 5th-round pick. Let's remember, guys. He's a 5th-round pick, and he's given us pretty much wide receiver 2 or 3 production most of his career. He was a guy that was on the verge of getting cut and then became pretty much our number 1 receiver this year. Slayton is a burner. He's kind of grown up a little bit. From my perspective, he's kind of grown up as that guy who, the defense is actually looking at because he's the only receiver of name that was healthy. And I think Slayton deserves some respect. I think he deserves some props from Giants fans because this may be the last time he played as a New York Giant. And I just want to thank him. I mean, as a 5th-round pick, he's given us a lot of highlight plays, a lot of moments that really got us through some bad seasons. And not to say that he's been a perfect player because he hasn't been. But shout out to Darius Slayton. Thank you, Darius Slayton, for everything you've done this year and in past years when you're making plays for us. Next up, Dexter Lawrence and Andrew Thomas are all pro players. They're both on the second team. I thought Dex should have been first team. AT can be second team because Trent Williams is a different animal. But they're all pros. When is the last time Giants players, like legit, not special teamers, not, all this other stuff, all pro players on the offensive and defensive lines, that shows that we're moving in the right direction. Yes, they're both Gettleman picks, but 2 first-round picks, guys. It looks like they're both going to be here for a long time. Dex and Andrew Thomas are all pros. Flawless season almost from Andrew Thomas. He had a couple of rough spots, but for the most part, a flawless season from him. Dex, completely dominant. I mean, completely dominant. There were times where nothing mattered. He could not be blocked. He could not be blocked at all. We have got to get some backup defensive tackles, a backup nose that is solid, so we can take Dex off the field and not have a horrible situation back there at nose tackle. Because if Dex can actually be fresh and not have to play that many downs as a 340-something pound man, think about the production he can give us if he's a lot more fresh. So Dex and AT, great years, all pro years. Excited to see it. Next, I got three cons in a row. First one, the linebackers were literally horrible. They were horrible. They were terrible. They were god awful. The linebackers this year were a disgrace. Started off with Tay Crowder and Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith had a couple of games to start this season. Jalen Smith made a couple of plays where I'm like, whoa, this looks like Notre Dame Jalen Smith. He's flying all over the place. And then he just kind of, I don't know. Poor guy. I mean, the knee since Notre Dame has not been good. He's deteriorated since then. And he's just not able to change direction as well as you would want him to. And if he picks the wrong gap, it's curtains. Micah McFadden ended up filling in for Tay Crowder. And just more of the same, just collapsing on something that may not even go there. Linebackers are a huge issue. We don't have a linebacker that can cover anybody. And we don't have a linebacker that can consistently stop the run. We don't have a linebacker. Like, there were a ton of times where our defensive line, unless they literally got into the backfield and stopped the carrier, there were a ton of times where our defensive line just stalemated, which is, solid, just stalemate. And the linebackers just could not get there to make that tackle at the second level. So we really need linebacker help. I think that's our number one need on this team. Usually you wouldn't say, linebacker is all that important, but the position is so bad on our team, so much worse than I believe most other teams in the league, that we need to address that position in the worst way. Next up, we need a slot corner. Let's cut the garbage, people. Darnay Holmes is not a starting slot corner in this league. The dude is grabbing and pulling everybody he covers every single play. He cannot stay with these guys side to side. He looked like a really good draft pick in his rookie season, and ever since then, he's just been awful. And this is just me being candid. Darnay Holmes seems like a great guy. He is really good in the run game. He's really good in the screen game. But as far as covering guys, we have to get better at that slot corner position. Maybe that's Aaron Robinson coming back. Maybe that's Cordell Flott. You would think maybe one of these third-round corners could step up and be a solid contributor. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe it's one of those two. Maybe it's somebody that's not on the team. But we need to get better at slot corner, 100%. Next up, Julian Love. Julian Love probably was the most underrated player on this team. And shout out to Talking Giants. They did a poll, I think a fan poll or a Talking Giants poll pretty much, where Julian Love got voted the most underrated player. And I agree with that. But he also is one of those guys that's underrated but also overrated. I think Julian Love is an above average safety, but he still has some times where he really could have helped us out. The tackling in this playoff game, and this may be recency bias, tackling in the playoff game from him was horrible, which is unfortunate because he's usually a good tackler. But he's also had a couple of times this season where he's just really misjudged deep balls. And maybe that's just like he shouldn't be back there and you need McKinney back there. But there are just a couple of times where he just misjudged some passes in the air. And he really, instead of going for the tackle, he just kind of jumped for a ball that had no chance of hitting his hands. I don't know what to think about Julian Love. I think he's a good player, but I also think he's had some crucial errors this season. I wouldn't break the bank to bring him back. But he is a guy that's above average. And, you know, you got an above average player. You can get him at a decent deal. Why not bring him back? And then the number one reason, not the number one reason, but the thing I'm going to wrap this video up with is we got a football coach. Plain and simple, we got a football coach. I don't know if we have a GM yet. I don't know if we have a GM yet. But one thing I do know is we got a football coach. Brian Daboll showed up on this team. He got out of that F-150. You can watch that video of him getting out of F-150, and there's literally probably over 1,000 songs that they've put to him walking out of that F-150. But ever since he stepped foot in that building, the culture actually changed. Joe Judge changed the culture, but he kind of went a little bit too far. Brian Daboll is allowing these players to all be themselves. We're literally watching players all being coached to get the best out of each and every single one of them. Dexter Lawrence is finally playing 0 and 1 tech, finally playing nose tackle. Literally, why did it take this long for a 40-something pound man to play in the right position instead of playing at 3 tech or instead of playing at 2 tech or even at 4 tech? It's literally ridiculous. Why did it take this long to ask Daniel Jones, what plays do you like? You know, why did it take this long to run Daniel Jones? Why did it take this long? You guys get the gist. You guys get it. So Brian Daboll put together a ton of game plans this season, whether it be him, whether it be Wink Martindale, his staff has won about 5 or 6 games this year, basically on just coaching. Of course, the players had to execute, but mostly coaching. Won about 5 or 6 games this year. He's going to win Coach of the Year, and he deserves it. And it's just that simple. We got a football coach. I think once you have a coach, all you need is a quarterback. And I'm about 85 to 90% sure we got a quarterback. He may not be a top 3 quarterback, but we got a quarterback. And once you got those two, you're going to be in it consistently. I believe that wholeheartedly. You're going to be in it consistently. Just continue to build that team. Continue to build that team. And I think the Giants will be headed in the right direction. So those are my, I don't know, might have had like 15 points. But I wanted to cover all of those things. Really great season for the first time in 6 years. The Giants were in the playoffs, and we actually won a playoff game for the first time in 11 years. So always happy to see it. Always happy to see it. You guys let me know what your favorite moment from this season was, and I'm going to get out of here. If you made it this deep into the video, come on, just hit the subscribe button. I make Giants content primarily, draft content secondarily, and during the season, I'm going to be doing a lot of reacting to pretty much most of the NFL games and everything NFL. So if you made it this deep, go ahead and join the D6 squad.